Well, happy January 20th, 2021. It's been quite a morning so far. I won't blame you if you're still at your television set this morning. But anyway, come rain, come shine, come peaceful transfer of power. Nothing stops us from reading at 10 o'clock every morning. Anyway, good morning. Perhaps you can see that it appears that a great weight has been lifted off my shoulders. Or not. Well, I guess we'll all have to see. Anyway, we're starting chapter 17, the 48 calls of the Enochian system. Now, there is so much of this chapter deals with charts and things like this that make a lot of sense and are easy to understand in the context of a textbook, but will pose some challenges for us reading it live. So, like other things that I've done so far, I've tried to actually post things on my site that you could print out for yourself if you don't have the book to look at, which you actually should. Anyway, so we're going to read part of this material today. Then tomorrow I will try to figure out how to post some wonderful illustrations and things to help us understand tomorrow's reading more clearly. So, but today we're on chapter 17, the 48 calls. The epigram is English translation of the first Enochian call, or at least the last few words of it. Move, therefore, and show yourselves. Open the mysteries of your creation. Be friendly unto me, for I am the servant of the same your God, true worshipper of the highest. The centerpiece of the Enochian system is a collection of calls in an angelic tongue that is significantly different from the language delivered in Liber Loagaeth. The reception of the calls followed that of the tablet of Nalvich. They were first dictated to the magicians in the angelic tongue and then afterwards translated into English. Careful examination of the calls and their translations reveal that Enochian is a real language and not simply a string of barbarous names and words. The calls read like evocative hymns or invocations. They are constructed of real, sometimes breathtakingly beautiful sentences that can be translated, not merely transliterated. The language exhibits a remarkable consistency of word meaning from call to call. It has a form of grammar and syntax. This phenomenon, coupled with the multiple double-blind letter-by-letter method by which it was received, makes this, in my mind at least, one of the most extraordinary aspects of D. and Kelley's workings. Technically, there are 49 calls. However, the first call was said to be unexpressed. I will refer to them as if there were 48. And remember what we said yesterday about at least my speculation that our the key to chanting the Table of Nalvich may have been, if not the unexpressed first call, the prelude to it. They appear translated in their entirety in the Appendix 2 of this book, along with the keys to how they are put to use by modern Enochian magicians. Also see Chapter 27. Beginning on April 10th, 1584, the first 4 calls were painstakingly delivered letter by letter in backward order, because the angels at first voiced fears that the calls were so powerful it might be too dangerous to deliver them in a straightforward manner. As usual, the letters were drawn from an assortment of lettered grids. The angels also provided translations for the first 4 calls immediately after their delivery. Then things changed. It appears that even the angels became impatient with this tedious method. They proceeded to deliver calls 5 through 18 in a straightforward manner, but they would wait 6 weeks before delivering the English translations. The fact that the translated words from the first 4 calls delivered backwards matched or were otherwise linguistically compatible with the translated words of calls 5 through 18 delivered forward and translated 6 weeks later, all but rules out the possibility that either Dee or Kelley invented the language, or the angelic language, or the calls. The 19th call, the call of the airs or aethers, and the names of the 30 aethers or heavens were received on July 13th, 1584, Dee's 57th birthday, effectively ending Dee and Kelley's angelic Magick relationship. However, before that final communication, the angels would deliver an incredible amount of material to the 2 magicians between April 10th and July 13th. Material that 300 years later would inspire the adepts of the Golden Dawn to develop the hybrid system we now call Enochian magic. I call it hybrid because the Enochian magic developed by the Golden Dawn and Crowley is based on a number of assumptions that connect the 48 calls with the other Enochian material. The other material Dee and Kelley received after the reception of the call. I refer to what are now commonly called the elemental tablets, which I'll discuss in detail in chapter 23 and beyond. While eminently logical and based on the most anal retentive hermetic principles, many of the assumptions made by the Golden Dawn and Crowley were nonetheless not clearly made in the original Dee material. First, however, we need to look at the circumstances that triggered the final and most astounding chapter in the story of the reception of Enochian magic. It all started with Dee wanting to spy on the King of Poland, and ended with the reception of what appears to be nothing less than the printed circuit board of the mind of God. And I'll just quickly begin chapter 18, the 91 parts of the earth. Now, the epigram is an imaginary conversation Dee and Kelley had with the angel Nalvich. Please don't think I'm quoting anything but my own fevered imagination. D. Hey, Nelvige, I'd sure like to magically eavesdrop on secret meetings between King Stefan of Poland and his ministers. I'd like to know if Count Albert Lasky will soon succeed Stephen as King of Poland. Can you help me do that? Nelvige, no problem. No problem, Dr. D. But first, you have to understand the universe where this can happen. You need to understand how everything in heaven and earth is connected to everything else in heaven and earth. The fantasy dialogue above is more than just another one of my lame attempts to be witty. It describes what, for all intents and purposes, was happening during this phase of the Enochian magic revelations. D was indeed trying to squeeze from the angel some information regarding the political intrigues of Poland. The angel Nalvige's response was to first try to explain to D and Kelley the mechanics of how specific spirits rule specific parts of the earth. In doing so, Nalvige would ambitiously attempt to demonstrate how everything in heaven and earth is connected to everything in heaven and earth. The results of this revelation D would neatly memorialize 13 months later in Liber Scientiae Auxiliae et Victoriae Terrestrius. D. Nalvige started by dividing the universe into 30 segments that would eventually be identified as heirs, or aethers. And then see column 1 of figure 63, which I'll attempt to post tomorrow. To the 30 aethers, or heirs, he assigned 91 parts of the earth, which he first referred to by the geographical name recognizable to 16th century magicians, such as Syria. See the second column and second name in column 3. Then by name by which it is known by the divine realms, such as Pascum. So in other words, the angels divided these up 91 parts of the earth, and they gave the geographic names that Dee and Kelley were familiar with, like Syria. And then they said, you call it Syria, but we call it Pascum. He then assigned each of these pairs of names to one of 12 mythical tribes of Israel, along with their directional coordinates, an angelic king, and a respectable number of good ministers. All this information and more can be found in figure 63. Columns 1 through 5 contain the information Dee and Kelley received at this stage of the reception. The symmetrical characters, and when I mean symmetrical characters, I'm talking about things that look like that squiggly line, those squiggly lines. Those are symmetrical characters. Let's see here. The symmetrical characters found in column 6 and the names of the good princes of the air in column 7 were delivered to Dee and Kelley at a later date than the information in the columns 1 through 5. This fact will have astonishing significance when we examine the circumstances and sequence of the events that brought to a close the angelic adventures of the two magicians. And then I'm going to give the key to the columns of the tables. Now, that's not going to make that much sense to you unless you have the book and look to page 113. But I will try to post some kind of version of these. So what I'll talk about that follows will make a little sense to you. But we'll have to wait till tomorrow to do that while I figure out how to post those things. Believe me, it is a wonderful, bizarre, and magical story how the 48 calls in the angelic tongue came into being, and how the 91 parts of the earth, plus their ruling angels, were identified. I know it's a little short today. We've only gone about 16 minutes. But it's been a very eventful day, especially in the United States. So I hope everybody continues to stay safe, be good to yourself, and be good to each other. And do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. See you tomorrow.